All right. So the name of this video is absolutely not hyperbole, and you're going to quickly see the reason why. So you see the reason why Smogon suspect tests are pointlessly elite very quickly if you just let me explain in the video. I know some people just like look at the titles of my videos so they complain about it without even watching them. Give me 5 minutes, I will explain in a perfectly understandable way why it is pointlessly elite, and you'll end up agreeing with me, most likely. You'll end up agreeing with me, or at least seeing my point. So someone in the chat said, I need someone to vote no ban because I am too lazy to get Rex for Moon. That's a very common refrain from suspect tests, or at least an excuse to not do it. The reason that is the case is not because of the ELO requirement, it's because of the GXE requirement entirely. This is actually a brutal requirement. So the way suspect tests work is that you need to get an ELO of 1750. Let's look at the ladder and see where that's at. So 1750 would be good enough for 1350, give or take one or two positions on the ladder. And that is, reasonable. They want to make sure that good players, people who know the meta enough, are making decisions about what gets banned, what gets unbanned, and that's perfectly reasonable. You want to have a certain qualification system for people to vote. You want people who are informed to make decisions. You don't want people who are uninformed and just watch the YouTuber and just vote based on whatever their YouTuber says. So you actually want informed people who are good enough to make independent decisions, who have played enough of the meta to know what's good, what's not, what's broken, what isn't. So you do need a baseline. So that's a perfectly reasonable requirement. I'm not going to come against the ELO requirement. However, let's go back. Let's go back. So GXC of 80. This is where the crux of this argument is going to be focused entirely. GXE is, it's kind of tough to explain. It's basically your projected win rate against an opponent. I think it's either rated 1000 or 1300. It's very weirdly calculated. It's not intuitive at all. Basically, your win loss rate heavily affects this statistic. It does not care about who you just beat or whatever. You cannot quickly change the stat with like ELO. It is very, very locked in, and it takes a lot of time to change your GXC. You can't just get on a hot streak and raise your GXC. You can't get on a low streak and just lose all your GXC in a day. That's not how GXC works. If we look at this, we see that a lot of people are under 80 GXC around here. The reason being that it's actually really, really tough to get 80 GXC because the suspect test requires you to make a new alt for the suspect test, and you need to post it in the chat and whatever. To get 80 GXE in a reasonable time, you essentially need to go like 30 and 5 or 40 and 10 with all your losses really in the 1600s, 1500s. If you lose a game in the 1300s, you're basically out of even having a chance at getting suspect test. The common thing people say to you if you try to get suspect Rex and you do not win every single game before 1300s is that they'll just tell you to make a new alt and restart. That's obviously very unintuitive. You just lost like a few hours of progress, which is just brutal. Another reason this is actually horrible is because it's just a brutal slog to get through OU low ladder if you're a very good player. And you have to try hard every single game because one game lost really, really does impact GXC. This is a huge barrier. GXC alone, if it was just the ELO requirement, you could get 3 games at once, just spam hyper offense, and just easily climb your way up, not giving a crap about losing the few games. You just win enough games to just continue. However, that strategy will absolutely not work for GXC. You have to try hard all the way up from 1000 on the ladder to 1750, and it's just so brutal to do that. Also, I will say that low ladder is honestly, if you're a low ladder player, I'm going to say that you're not actually that bad. I think low ladder has vastly improved since Gen 7. I think that's more I think it's very much due to the quality of Pokemon content, especially on YouTube. We see the increase in good PokeTubers getting watched, like Blunder, Pokeaim, Freezeye's very good, even Jimothy Cool. And even the Nuzlocke guys who get people into Pokemon have very much, like, they went from casual audience to actually just be very good at the game. Like Alpharad, Captain Kid, who else? Oh, Pokemon Challenge also got a lot of people into just being better at Pokemon, honestly. And so we've seen a huge increase in the skill on low ladder, to be honest. And it's actually not easy to just get free wins on low ladder. Like in Gen 7, to get Rex, all you really had to do was spam Rain until 1500s because they could just literally not beat Rain. Because honestly, Gen 7 Rain is really, really overtuned. Even at the highest level, Rain is still really good, but it would just automatically blow through every low ladder. But you can't really rely on HO to just get you flawless through low ladder. The consistent teams are more balanced or fat, bulky offense, which is just another way to just slow you down. At the end of the day, Pokemon Showdown, you're playing the game to have fun, okay? You're playing the game to have fun, and slogging through low ladder is just absolutely not fun. It is just absolutely not fun. It turns your recreational free time into a boring slog. We have to go through low ladder. And if you end up losing enough games to where you essentially have to reset, it just means that you've wasted hours of your life doing it. You feel totally disinterested in getting Rex again because it's just such a because you have to go through the boringest part of the low ladder, the 1000s again. Or I will be showing the problems with having to ladder perfect through low ladder in a few or in a single replay. I could pull up a few more. Okay, so this one is versus a guy who's rated. This was like a 1800s game. All right. So here's a turn. You see Zapdos and on Chestnut. So I know I'm versus a player rated 1800 or whatever. So I know to play somewhat aggressively. You're not going to win a game this high up. You just play passively the whole game. So I make a play here. One of my more preferred aggressive plays is to stay in and just spike on the Zapdos. And obviously the guy calls me ass for doing so, but he got completely owned. So the reason you can make a play like this is because what is the punish here? So he could obviously Hurricane my Chestnut and want to KO it. However, I assume that he won't do that because we're high up on the ladder. This guy seems to be spamming Volt Turn a little bit. Went for knockoff Ogre Pawn, went for a U-turn already. Seems to be more focused on like Volt Turn strategies. So you never want to let Ting Lu in for free because Ting Lu can just get hazards on your team, especially if you're spamming Volt Turn. I knocked your boots and I knocked and this thing just takes hazards in general. You're not gonna want hazards to ever go up. So you're not gonna let Ting Lu in for free in general. If it was obviously if this is like Storm Storm or someone extremely high skill, I would not make this play. But against someone in a decent level, pretty decent or pretty good player, I would obviously make this play. I think it's a pretty safe play to make this high up. One of the more safer aggressive plays you can make. So I end up spiking with my Chestnut on the Zapdos. However, if this was low ladder, they could just click Hurricane just to do it. I don't really understand the thought process behind low ladder players. I can't really understand their minds, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't have an easy time getting Rex. I want to see what other top players say about getting Rex. Because honestly, it's a huge hurdle for me, at least, to getting Rex. Just having to read low ladder players because the refrain for me was just play ultra conservatively until you hit 1500s and you'll just win enough to do that. I have to say that low ladder is vastly improved in skill. That doesn't really work anymore. You have to make some level of plays, but the problem is you don't know which plays to make in low ladder. Because if this is a low ladder, I could just got Hurricane right there. I give myself a 50-50 chance if this is low ladder. For Chestnut, just get Hurricane there, and the opponent just type agency in the chat. Because yeah, a lot of Pokemon YouTube viewers will just make crazy plays. You can't really predict them, which is a huge problem. You're getting 80 GXE. Obviously, you have a good chance to beat any low ladder player as a high level player, but you don't have a 100% chance. It's like football. Any given Sunday applies in Pokemon. Anyone can be anyone with a certain amount of hacks, with a certain amount of crazy plays that just works out. Anyone can beat anyone. Another example, I'm going to show up about how tough low ladder is. I don't actually know who this player is, but this explains a bit of a weird quirk of getting suspect text Rex. So you can see my team. This is my RMT, the number one getting team. This is one of the best teams in the entire world. However, I would literally never use this team for suspect test Rex. You might notice that I don't have a ground type. That is a huge issue in this game. I just brought this team in OU seasonal, which I would not recommend anyone bringing an RMT team to an OU seasonal. I was just like, it's round one. I don't give a crap. I'm just gonna bring whatever and just win. I did get 2-0'd because I got lazy and brought my RMTs, but that's not the issue I want to bring up here. So this guy has some sort of boots or specs raging bolt with Volt Switch, and he has more of a Volt turn team into like Kyurem. So this strategy absolutely is just garbage in high ladder. You never see a team like this in high ladder because it just doesn't work. It's just not that good. However, you are going to see it on low ladder because people just love spamming Volt Switch and U-turn. I think that's the be all end all. Um, so if so, this team with no ground type can work in high level play, but against a bunch of low ladder players, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. The team that can, a very good team in Pokemon is one that can beat good players the most often. A good team to get suspect test Rex is a team that loses to the least amount of bad players. It's a complete 180 of what a good team is. It doesn't, it's not correlated to like anything else. Okay, and now we're gonna bring out the voting quality of the players regardless. Okay, so I built the Palafin suspect test. So the reason that we have the whole GXE and ELO requirement, even though the GXE requirement's a bit like annoying, you could say that it calls for a higher quality of player, and you're gonna get more knowledgeable people if you have these kind of requirements. I'm gonna show why that's actually not that true. So I'm gonna give this suspect test for Palafin. We got 25 unbans to 78 do not bans. If you voted to unban Palafin, I think you're an idiot. Two, should you be barred from voting forever? I'm gonna say no, just because that could be abused. But if you voted for Palafin here, I really have to question your intelligence as a human being. I don't care if you made suspect test Rex. It's just such a stupid, obviously broken Pokemon that there is no justifiable reason to vote unbanned for this thing. And there were living, breathing humans who achieved the suspect test Rex, which is supposed to sift out all the players who don't know what they're talking about, who aren't invested in the tier. And we still got 25 votes to unban Palafin, which is just inexcusable. The number should be numerically 0 if the suspect test was working to sift out all the bad players, or at least be like a rounding error, like 3-1. It should not be double digits. It should not be 25%. This should have been, if you wanted to make this like based on voters who were actually smart and know things about the metagame, this should have been 5% maximum. Anything above that is just embarrassing. Even some tour players were pro the suspect. I remember Blunder saying that we should suspect test Palafin, and some other tour players were saying it. I think you don't know what you're talking about if you are saying to unban Palafin. Even a cursory glance at Palafin will tell you why this Pokemon is broken. With its obscene stats and the water typing just being horribly constrictive on the metagame. We saw that it's the exact same thing as Dracovish, and we just had Dracovish round 2 for a month in OU, because why not? But the fact that anyone voted unbanned really speaks against the quality of the voters. So another thing this does is because ADGXC is so annoying to get, you just have a more dedicated group of people who got suspect test Rex, because it's actually pretty difficult to get suspect test Rex. So you're gonna get more people who are like more motivated to do it. That's not actually a good thing, because the people you're gonna be getting for that are the people who just absolutely hate the metagame and want a Pokemon ban because they think, oh, just after this ban, we'll totally fix the metagame. Everything will become fun again. I've seen people like Skyman from the OU chat. You know, he talks like that in the OU chat. There are people like that who are just miserable playing their air quotes favorite online games, like every League of Legends player, and they're just miserable the entire time, saying, "Oh, this thing's broken. If this thing was just banned, it'd be so much better." And then sometimes the devs listen to them, they nerf the thing, and something else becomes broken. It just doesn't improve anything. That's why I like the baseline. I think it has to be a 60% chance or 60% votes to get something banned, which I do like, but doesn't actually fix the problem because more people who are haters are going to suspect text Rex. Because if you're a moderate like myself, who doesn't think Roaring Moon is gonna change the meta that much either way, discourages you even further from attempting. So the people who actually will go out of their way to attempt suspect test Rex are people who are obsessed about the Pokemon getting banned, which is not the voting pool I'd say you want. I'd say you want just every good player. I have to also question why there even has to be a GXE requirement at all. Even if there's like 70, I'd say, like, what's the point? I don't think there's any point for the GXE requirement whatsoever. Because if we look at the ladder, if the top 350 people had a vote, I mean, is the quality really that bad of the voters? Is that really too inexcusable? I mean, to further sift out people, or if we even honestly, I'd say if the suspect tests were 1850, it'd still be easier than an 80% GXE. If we move up the suspect test to 1850, we have essentially the top 100 players. And what's the issue with the top 100 players just voting? Because if you get 80% GXE, you can 100% get 1850. I don't think there's any human on Earth who can get 80 GXE but not get 1850. So you essentially have a top 100 give or take people, which is essentially who voted in the Palafin test. Palafin test was like 111 people. So that'd be fine. That'd be equivalent. It'd just be easier to get Rex and less boring to get Rex if it was 1850. And why shouldn't the top 100 players straight up not be able to get a vote? Or if we move it down to 1800, 1800 is 1800 is top 200. What's the problem with the top 200 players being able to vote? Because I don't see what GXE is really going to do here. I think the top 200 players should have a vote. I think that's a perfectly reasonable cutoff. The top 200 players, they know they're in the top 200. They know the metagame. They play enough to know what's good enough to be top 200. That's a pretty solid line to cut it off. I don't see why you need to further sift people out with the boring GXE requirement of 80 that just make getting suspect text just a huge grind and just so boring and unfun. Personally, this is the one thing keeping me away from getting suspect text if I'm not too concerned about the meta anyway. And if you have to restart at any point, you've lost a few hours, and it's just a brutal grind to just waste 3 hours getting suspect text for X. If you do it the first time, it's still 3 hours wasted. My suggestion for the OU Council to change suspect text is just make this 1800 or keep it 1750. I don't care. Just remove this. Just remove the GXE requirement. It's pointless. It does nothing besides making getting suspect test Rex boring and more elite for literally no reason. And obviously way more frustrating and boring. I don't know about you guys, but I have ADHD and I literally am not going to focus on a single low ladder game. I'm going to get 3 low ladder games and just spam my teams. If we had no GXE, I'd get Rex every test because all you have to do is spam HO and then get 1800. Not a problem for me. However, because you can't just spam 3 games of HO and low ladder, it becomes way more brutal. We see people in the chat saying that GXE sucks and that keeps them away from going for Rex. We just have a way better process, I feel, if we remove GXE. We get less extreme voices in the voting, and even the people we are getting in voting is just not that good.